The days leading up to Emma's wedding were a whirlwind of activity, excitement, and a dash of nervousness. As her only child, I had been looking forward to this moment for as long as I could remember. The thought of seeing her walk down the aisle, glowing in her white gown, made my heart swell with pride and emotion. I had been a single mother for as long as I could remember, and raising Emma had been my life's purpose. Now, she was getting married, and it felt like a monumental moment in both of our lives. The wedding preparations had consumed us for months. Emma had always been particular about the details: every flower, every piece of lace, every song played during the ceremony had been meticulously chosen. At times, it felt like I was more of a coordinator than a mother, but I didn't mind. I was happy to be involved. After all, this was the most important day of her life, and I wanted to do everything I could to make it perfect for her. My house, which had always been a sanctuary for us, had become the command center for the wedding. Plans. We spent countless hours sitting at the kitchen table, going over guest lists, picking vendors, and discussing every last detail. It was during one of these late-night planning sessions when Emma casually dropped the bombshell. "Mom, I've been thinking about something," she said, as we sipped on our cups of tea and went through a stack of wedding invitations. "David and I are talking about the future. You know, after the wedding, we need to make some decisions." I looked up, surprised by the sudden change in tone. "What kind of decisions, sweetie?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering away from mine as though searching for the right words. "Well, we've been talking about where we want to live after the wedding. And David and I thought about your house." My heart skipped a beat. Emma had always loved the house we'd lived in, a charming 3-bedroom home that I had worked so hard to afford. It wasn't big, but it was comfortable. We had created a life there, and every inch of it was filled with memories. Emma's childhood, birthdays, holiday dinners, and quiet nights spent reading together. The thought of her asking about the house caught me off guard, and I wasn't sure what she meant. "Are you saying you want to live here?" I asked, confused. She shifted in her seat, her expression becoming more serious. "Not exactly. I mean, we've been thinking about it for a while. You've always talked about downsizing, and David and I want to settle down here. This place has a lot of potential. It's big enough for the two of us, and you don't really need all the space anymore. You've got a lot of stuff, and you've said yourself that you'd like something smaller." I felt a lump form in my throat as her words settled in. It was true, Emma had been suggesting I downsize for a while, and I had entertained the idea. The house had become too much for me to maintain alone, and I'd often mentioned that I'd be open to something more manageable in the future. But now, hearing her so casually suggest that I give up my home completely, that she wanted it for herself and her new husband, left me feeling blindsided. I'm not sure I understand, Emma," I said, struggling to hide the shock in my voice. "You want me to give you the house? Just like that?" She nodded, her eyes earnest. "Mum, I love you, but you don't need it anymore. David and I are starting our lives together, and we need a place. We've been thinking about this for months, and it just makes sense. You could sell the house, and then you can use the money to move somewhere smaller. It's perfect." I sat there, my mind racing. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I had spent years making this house our home, creating a space filled with memories of Emma growing up. This house wasn't just a roof over our heads. It was the embodiment of everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed for her. The idea of losing it, of just handing it over, felt like someone had ripped the ground out from under. Emma, I don't think you understand," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "This house is where we've spent our lives. It's where I raised you. I can't just give it to you. This house means more to me than you realize. Emma's expression shifted, the edge of frustration creeping into her voice. Mom, you've been saying for years that you want something smaller. You've talked about moving to a retirement community, or even a condo. You don't need this much space anymore. It's just a house. I'm not asking for something unreasonable. I looked at her, feeling the familiar pang of helplessness I hadn't felt in a long time. I loved her so much, but right now, she wasn't the little girl I had raised. She was a grown woman, someone with her own life, her own plans, and now, she was asking me to give up the very thing that had been the foundation of my life for the last 2 decades. Understand that you and David need to start your life together, but I need you to understand that this is my life, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of disbelief and hurt. I've worked so hard for this house. I've made it our home, and I'm not ready to just walk away from it. She was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, it was with a hint of impatience in her voice. Mum, I don't think you're seeing this clearly. You've been talking about downsizing for ages. You're just holding on to something because of the memories. It's just a house, Mom. It's not your whole life. David and I are ready to start ours, and this is what we need. The way she spoke, the way she reduced my home to just a building. A thing hurt more than I could have imagined. It's just a house. I had always taught her the value of memories, of sentiment, of the importance of the things we build together. But now, it felt like she had forgotten all of that, like none of it mattered anymore. It wasn't just about a house. It was about the life I had built within these walls. I can't just give it to you, Emma, I repeated, my voice firmer now, though still trembling with emotion. This house is where I've made my life. It's where we made our life. She didn't respond immediately, but I could see the frustration building in her eyes. I knew her better than anyone, and I could tell that she was beginning to lose her patience with me. Look, Mom, she said, her voice tight. We're not asking for much. I need you to think about this. It's time. You're not using the space. You could move into something smaller, something that works for you. It's just what makes sense for both of us. Please, just think about it. I felt my chest tighten, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. The words she was saying were so foreign to me, so detached from everything I had thought we shared. I had always believed that the love and respect we had for each other would guide us through any difficult decision. But now I realized we were standing on opposite sides of a divide that I didn't know how to bridge. Emma, I said softly, my heart breaking. I don't know if I can do that. Not right now. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the mixture of frustration and confusion in her eyes. I could feel the tension between us, the chasm that was slowly widening. She opened her mouth to respond, but instead of words, she just sighed. You know what? Fine, she said, throwing up her hands in exasperation. If you're not going to see reason, then maybe we're done talking about this. The words hit me harder than I expected, like a punch to the gut. I had always been there for Emma, always done everything I could to make her life better, to support her in every way. But in that moment, I realized that she had already made up her mind. She wasn't asking me to make a decision. She was telling me what I should do. I stood there, feeling the weight of the conversation settle heavily on my shoulders. I had no idea what to say next. She had asked for the house, and I had said no, but now it felt like I had done more than just refused her request. I had somehow failed her. She was upset, angry even, and all I could do was stand there, feeling the room closing in on me. For the first time, I began to wonder if things between us would ever be the same again. Was this the beginning of the end for our relationship? Was this the moment that would change everything? The silence that followed Emma's ultimatum was deafening. The words she had just thrown at me hung in the air like a storm cloud, and I stood there, struggling to process what had just transpired. She had always been headstrong, independent, but I never imagined she would ask for something like this. I had spent the last 25 years of my life raising her, loving her, giving everything I had to ensure she had a better life than I did. And now, on the eve of her wedding, she was asking for my home, my memories, my stability. She had made her point clear. She needed the house for her future with David, for the life they were about to build together. But how could she be so indifferent about the significance of this place? This house wasn't just a physical structure, it was everything. It was the place where I had shaped Emma's life, where we had shared so many moments of joy, pain, love, and growth. How could she not see that? I couldn't stop the tide of emotions that surged through me. There was anger, yes, but there was also a deep sadness, grief, even. This wasn't just about a property or a place to live. It was about the bond we shared, the understanding that I had always thought we had. I had given everything to her, and now it felt like she was asking me to give up the one thing that had always been mine. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. The pain I felt was overwhelming, but I knew I couldn't let my emotions dictate my response. I had to think. I had to understand. But how could I? How could I understand why she wanted this so badly? And more importantly, how could I understand why she thought she had the right to ask for it? I excused myself from the room, feeling like I needed space to breathe, to think. I didn't want to lash out at her, but my heart was broken. I had always told her that the house was hers if she ever needed it, and it was a safe place, a constant she could always come back to. But this was different. She wasn't asking to visit or stay. She was asking for it permanently. She wanted the house for herself and David, and I couldn't reconcile that with the love and care I had poured into making it our home. I went to the kitchen, my hands trembling as I prepared a cup of tea. The kettle whistled, but the sound felt distant, as if it was coming from somewhere far away. I sat at the table, staring at the mug in my hands, trying to clear my mind, to make sense of everything. I had always been the strong one, the one who made sacrifices for my family, who put everyone else's needs ahead of my own. It had always been my role. I had been the mother who made sure Emma had everything she needed: love, support, stability. I had been the provider, the emotional anchor, and I had done it all without hesitation, without asking for anything in return. It was my choice, my responsibility. But now, with Emma's request, it felt like all of that had been thrown back in my face. Had I done something wrong? Had I not taught her the value of what we had built together? I took a sip of tea, the warmth calming me for a moment, but it didn't take away the gnawing emptiness that had settled deep in my chest. I thought about how much Emma had grown over the years, how she had matured into a strong, independent woman. She had always been driven, ambitious, focused on her goals. She had worked hard to get to where she was, and I was proud of her for that. But somewhere along the way, I had lost her. Or maybe I had lost the version of her I had raised. The little girl who had looked up to me, who would crawl into my lap for comfort. The young woman who had once told me she would never leave me, that we would always be a team. Now, she was asking for something I couldn't give, and I couldn't understand how we had arrived here. I had always tried to be open to her dreams, her aspirations, but this was something different. This was a fundamental shift in how I thought we related to each other, and it hurt more than anything I had experienced in a long time. I couldn't help but think about her wedding, which was just days away. I had been so excited to see her start this new chapter of her life. I had imagined myself standing there beside her, supporting her, watching her walk into this new chapter with grace and love. But now everything was clouded with this question of the house. I couldn't just let it go. The idea of giving up my home, especially to her, felt like a betrayal of everything I'd worked for. I wasn't ready to walk away from the life I had built. The evening passed in a blur, and I found myself sitting on the couch later that night, staring at the empty space around me. The wedding dress, which had been hanging in the guest room, was a stark reminder of how everything had changed. Emma had always been my little girl, and now she was about to marry someone else, start a life with him, and no longer need me in the same way. And that, in itself, was difficult to process. But now, with her request to take the house, it felt like more than just a shift in our relationship. It felt like a rupture. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, the thoughts racing through my mind, trying to figure out what had happened, how I had gotten to this point. I wanted to be supportive, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that I was being asked to give up something that was too important to me. I was being asked to give up my foundation, the place where my life had unfolded. I thought about how my parents had passed down their values to me. They had always taught me the importance of family, of home, of cherishing the moments that matter. They had built their own home from scratch, and I had carried that lesson with me throughout my life. I had always planned to pass that down too. Emma. I had imagined that one day she would take this house and keep it as a part of her own legacy. But this wasn't how I had imagined it happening. It wasn't supposed to feel like a transaction. It wasn't supposed to feel like I was being replaced. Not the next morning, I knew I needed to talk to her. I had to find a way to communicate what I was feeling without alienating her, without making her feel like she had done something irreparable. I needed her to understand that it wasn't about her. It was about me, about what this house represented. I wasn't just holding on to it because of some sentimental attachment. I was holding on to it because it was part of me, part of who I had become over the years. Letting go wasn't easy, and it wasn't something I could just do to make her happy. But I also knew that I couldn't let this become the wedge that would drive us apart forever. I had to find a way to communicate my feelings, to express my emotions without pushing her away. This wasn't just about a house, it was about love, respect, and the realization that we were both growing in different directions. I took a deep breath as I picked up the phone to call her, preparing myself for the difficult conversation that was about to unfold. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew I had to try to make her understand. I had to find a way to preserve the bond we shared, even if it meant sacrificing something that had always been a part of me. The phone rang twice before she answered, her voice warm but still tinged with tension. "Mom? Emma, we need to talk," I said, trying to steady myself. I wasn't sure where this conversation would take us, but I had to be honest. About the house. And with that, the conversation began, the beginning of what would become the most difficult moment in our relationship. The phone call with Emma was, without a doubt, one of the most difficult conversations I had ever had. As the phone rang, I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I had been dreading this moment, but I knew it was necessary. This wasn't just about a house. It was about something much bigger. It was about understanding each other, about reconciling our differences before they drove an irreparable wedge between us. When Emma picked up the phone, her voice was tentative and I could sense the hesitation in her words. "Mom? Emma, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel the tension building in me. "About the house." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could practically feel her steeling herself for what I was about to say. "I know, Mom," she replied. "I know you're upset. And I just want you to understand that I'm not trying to hurt you." I took a deep breath. Her words hit me in an unexpected way. She was already apologizing. It wasn't what I had expected. It felt like a small opening, a crack in the walls of the argument that had kept us apart. I pressed on, though I could feel my own emotions rising. "I don't think you understand what you're asking of me, Emma," I began, my voice soft but firm. "This isn't just a house. It's where I've built my life. It's where I raised you. Every corner, every room is filled with memories. It's not something I can just give away. It's not that simple." I could hear her breathing on, the other end of the line, and I could tell she was struggling with the words. "I never meant for you to feel like I don't appreciate everything you've done. Mum, I know you've sacrificed so much for me. But David and we want to start our life together. And this house, it just makes sense for us. You've talked about downsizing for years. You've always said you didn't need so much space." I felt a pang in my chest. She was right. In a way. I had talked about downsizing. I had mentioned the idea of moving somewhere smaller, somewhere easier to maintain. But giving her my home, the place where my entire identity had been built, it wasn't just about space. It was about the life I had created, the memories that were tied to every square inch of this house. "Emma," I said, trying to hold back tears, "this house is home to me. It's where you grew up. It's where I became the woman I am today. I can't just let it go. It's not about space or how big it is. It's about my life. It's about the memories I've created here." Her voice was softer now, more measured. "I get that, Mom, I really do. But I think you're seeing this as me taking something from you. It's not like that. I want to create new memories in this house with David. I want to be close to you. We don't have to sell it. You can still come over whenever you want. It's just ... It's just the next step in our lives. And I want you to understand that." The more she spoke, the more I could hear the sincerity in her voice. She wasn't being cold. She wasn't being entitled. She was trying to make me see her side, trying to explain that she wasn't asking for the house out of selfishness, but out of necessity, out of love for her future. "I know this is hard for you," she continued, her voice breaking. I need you to know that I'm not trying to push you away. I want to make this work for both of us." Her words began to sink in, but the pain I felt from her request still lingered. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to understand that this wasn't about me losing something. It was about her starting a new chapter of her life. But I also had to face the truth. I wasn't ready to let go. I wasn't ready to feel like an afterthought in her new world. "I'm not ready to let go of this place, Emma," I said softly, my voice trembling. "But I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. I really am. You and David deserve to start your life together. I just ... I just need more time. More time to process this." There was a long pause on the other end of the phone. I could tell that Emma was still processing my words. We had been at odds for so long, and this conversation was pulling apart. Layers of unresolved feelings. She wasn't just asking for my house. She was asking me to let go of something I had held onto for so long. And letting go was never easy. "I'll give you all the time you need, Mom," Emma said finally, her voice gentle. "I don't want to make you feel like you're being pushed out. I'll wait. I'll wait as long as it takes for you to come to terms with this. I love you." Her words, those 3 little words, hit me like a wave. I realized in that moment that what she had been asking for wasn't the house at all. What she had been asking for was my blessing. She needed me to support her, to trust that she and David could build their life without taking anything from me. She didn't want to hurt me. She wanted to build something new, and in that, I could see her love for me. "I love you too, Emma," I whispered, my voice softening. "And I want to support you. I just need time. This is hard for me. I know, Mom. I know, she said, her voice full of understanding. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready. After a few more minutes of quiet, we ended the call. I sat there in the living room, the phone in my hand, feeling emotionally drained. The air in the house felt different now. It was still the same home, still the same familiar space, but the weight of the conversation hung heavily in the air. I wasn't sure what would happen next. I didn't know if I would ever be ready to give up this house. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about trust, respect, and the way I needed to learn to let go. Walked around the house, each room feeling both comforting and foreign, like I was standing on the edge of something I wasn't prepared for. As I wandered through the hallways, I remembered the late nights spent comforting Emma after a breakup, the mornings we spent baking together in the kitchen, the sound of her laughter echoing through the house. These walls held so many memories of us, of our lives together. How could I let go of that? But as I stood in the hallway, staring at the photos on the walls, I realized something. Emma was starting her own life. She was growing up, and maybe, just maybe, it was time for me to let her take this next step. It didn't mean I had to give up the love I had for this house, or for her. But maybe it was time for me to let go of the fear of losing control, of losing my place in her life. That night, I slept fitfully, my thoughts swirling with what Emma had said. It wasn't just about the house. It was about my role in her life. And while I wasn't ready to make any final decisions, I knew that something had shifted. I was beginning to see things from her perspective, and that, in itself, was a start.